Okay, welcome everybody.
Oh, hold on.
Got it? Everybody hear me okay? Okay, welcome everybody to the Saturday Speaker Series meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have one, before we open up the meeting, I have one item to take care of. This meeting has an ASL interpreter, and we will now spotlight their screen so that you can recognize them. Okay, to keep her video highlighted, use the pin feature. To turn the feature on, click the dots on her video and choose Pin Video on a PC or Mac. If you have a smartphone or tablet, double-click their video to pin it. Once again, I want to welcome everybody to the Saturday Speaker Series of Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome from our part of the world to your part of the world. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Bowmanville Group near Toronto, Canada, and my name is Jeff. It is customary to open our meeting with a moment of silence followed by the Serenity Prayer. You may use that moment as you see fit. I like to pray for the still suffering alcoholic that's still out there, hopefully going to one day find these rooms. But you may use it as you please to feel free to use it. May we have that moment now, please. And the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What is Alcoholics Anonymous? Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. As I said, my name is Jeff and I am an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Bowmanville Group. It is customary for the chairperson to qualify. Very early in my sobriety, I heard the chairperson qualify this way, and it has stuck with me ever since. And what he said was, I had a lot of fun with alcohol, and then alcohol had a lot of fun with me. And I could relate to that. I thought alcohol was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I've come to learn that I suffered all my life from a lot of fear and anxiety. And when I drank, it calmed things down. It stopped the squirrel cage in my head from spinning out of control. It seemed like it made it feel okay for me to be me. I've since come to learn, since I've come to Alcoholics Anonymous, that what alcohol was doing was getting me out of me. And in doing so, I've just identified what the problem was. The problem was me. Alcohol was not the problem. Alcohol was a symptom of the problem. And I used alcohol to get me out of me. And by the time it got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I had no idea who I was. Alcohol wasn't doing what it used to do as far as helping me deal with life or cope with life, deal with people, places, and things. It's like I was missing, growing up, I was missing on a textbook on how to live life. And I found that textbook in Alcoholics Anonymous, our big book. and it's taught me to deal with life on life's terms, how to handle people, places, and things, how to handle things emotionally, and life is better today than I ever imagined it, and I owe it all to Alcoholics Anonymous and people like you and meetings like this. So that should qualify me. I wanted to pass on one quick piece of very useful information that I found on the internet just the other day. And it was that scientists have discovered that the universe is comprised of protons, neutrons, and electrons. I think they forgot about morons. Perhaps you've come across them in your path, especially driving on the highway, people going 3 times the speed limit, people realizing their exit's coming up and they go across 4 lanes of traffic to get off and cut everybody off. So here's to you, all you morons out there. Anyway, hope you found that a little bit of a chuckle. It's customary as well at this meeting to have the 12 steps and the 12 traditions read. And first of all, to do the 12 steps, I've asked Roger G. from the Bowmanville group.
My name's Roger. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Roger.
Bowmanville group. Hi. 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. 1, we admitted we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Roger. And now to read the 12 traditions, I've asked Mike C. from Toronto.
Hi friends, I am an alcoholic member of this group. A member of the Keep It Simple group. My name is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Tradition 1. Common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon a unity. 2. For group purposes, but one ultimate authority, a loving God as He may express Himself in group conscience. Our leaders are but trust and service they do not govern. The only requirement for A membership is the desire to stop drinking. 4. Each group should be autonomous, affecting other groups of A as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose: this message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6. In any group ought to hang on. An A group ought to never be endorsed, financed, or in the AA name to any with a facility or outside advice. Thus, problems of property and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every A group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service that may employ special workers. as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought to never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain anonymity as the person at the level of best radio and film. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Our speaker today will be sharing for approximately 1 hour. I'm looking very forward to hearing his message tonight. Our speaker comes to us from Austin, Texas, to share his message. The committee is pleased to introduce Charlie P. from Austin, Texas.
Hi, everybody. I'm Charlie Parker. I'm very grateful recovered alcoholic. Really happy to be here tonight. I just, right up front, I want to apologize for my voice. I had throat surgery 2 weeks ago. When I was booking the talk, I thought, I'll be smooth by then. But apparently they took a little bigger biopsy this time than normal. But everything came back non-cancerous, so I'm just a little froggy, but yeah, it's all good. I told him, I said, just keep me walking and talking, I'll take it from there, but it's funny. It's just been a wonderful day. I'm so happy to be here, and, there's, my home group is the primary purpose group of Alcoholics Anonymous. We meet on Tuesday nights at 7:30 Central Time in Austin, Texas. I always say 2701 South Lamar, but I'm going to give out my Zoom meeting here in a little while. Dustin, would you put this in the chat? Primary Purpose Group, Austin, 7:30 Central. Here's the Zoom number, 630-577-473. Why would anybody care? Well, it's a very different group. We are a big book study. We study the book line by line, week after week, and it's just a lot more fun than it sounds like. We've been doing that for 14 years now, and during regular times, we have about 225 people studying the book on a Tuesday night in Austin, Texas. And lately with our Zoom, we've been running around 500 people, and it's a great meeting, a lot of energy, and that really like. My sponsor is Myers R. Before that, my deceased sponsor was Mark Houston, who really changed my life. If you don't hear me say anything else tonight, get a hold of some Mark Houston and listen to it. I can't even tell you how many times people have come up to me and said, Mark Houston changed my life, and I never even met him. All I ever did was listen to him on CD. So, I was very fortunate. He walked into our lives. And, let's see, home group sobriety, and then Katie, my wife Katie, is we've had such a wonderful day. I got up and I got to go shoot in a shotgun tournament. I'm a competitive shotgun shooter, and we had the shotgun tournament. I got first and second place today. Then they had a big crawfish boil, and then I got to speak at Founders Day, and then my sponsor got to speak at Founders Day. Katie and I did a talk at Founders Day. It was really funny. I was talking to my mother. I was telling her about that talk, and she said, I hope your voice holds up. I said, yeah, me too. And she said, but I guess if you're splitting the hour with Katie, if your voice gives out, she can take over. She has no idea. I was like, that is not going to happen. I'll learn sign language before that happens. I do want to give a shout out to the ASL interpreter. I think it's wonderful that you have an interpreter for the hearing impaired. And at our group, we've been saving up money. I think we're going to try to get an interpreter for people that can hear but won't listen. We've been working on that. That was a joke, Dustin. Come on, laugh it up. All right, that's it. Stop staring at the screen. I was looking for you, brother. You know, I wear a coat and tie when I speak. It's funny. I was raised that way. My first sponsor, I'll never forget. One time I was just going to chair a meeting about 35 years ago, and my sponsor said, "Charlie, it's okay if you don't want to wear a coat and tie to the meeting this weekend." I thought, "Oh, good." He goes, "I mean, you still have to wear one, but it's okay if you don't want to." You know, and it was that way for a long time. It's like just take the direction and do what you're told. You know, my job tonight is to talk. Oh, my job is to start my little timer. Okay, I don't want to run over. How long have I been going, Dustin? Okay, all right, here we go. My job is to talk about what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And I hope to get to all that. There's a little joke I like to tell before I get started. It's a joke just to warm the room. You know, in AA, we talk about coming out of our own experience. And man, I'm about to wear this thing out. We talk about coming out of our own experience in AA. And it always reminds me of this little joke. And it's about this guy that's driving along one day on this country road, and he's driving by this farmhouse. Excuse me, and he sees a sign that says "talking dog for sale." And he can't stand it. He goes up to the front door, and his farmer's sitting down on the front porch, and he goes, "Do you have a talking dog for sale?" And the guy says, "Yeah, he's around back." And he wanders around back, and this little red hound dog's laying there, and he looks at the dog, and he goes, "So you can talk?" And the dog says, "Well, I certainly can." And he goes, "My God, how did that happen?" And he goes, "Well, it's actually a pretty interesting story." He said, "When I was young, I started picking up some language skills from some of the humans that I interacted with. And as I got older, I started developing the language. I started working with some of the nuances of the language. I started working with slang and colloquialisms. And it's just made a fabulous life for me." He said, "I had a 19-year career with the Drug Enforcement Administration. I was able to infiltrate some scenes that no human agent would have ever been able to get into." He says, "I've traveled the world. I've stayed in some of the finest hotels. I've eaten the cooking of some of the world's greatest chefs." He goes, "But you know, more interesting than me, some of my puppies have developed foreign language skills and have become international diplomats." He said, "2 of my pups are in the United Nations building right now as international diplomats." And the guy goes, "My God, it's just been fascinating talking to you." And he walks back up front where that farmer's sitting there, and he goes, "How much do you want for that dog?" And the guy goes, "I don't know. How about $40? He goes, "Why on earth would you ever sell a fabulous dog like that for $40? The farmer thinks for a second. He goes, "None of that crap he told you is true." You know? It's kind of like that around here. It doesn't really matter how good the story is if it's not my experience, you know, because drunks can smell BS from a mile away. You know, that's the weirdest thing about a Zoom meeting is when you tell a joke. Because I'm sitting here in a room laughing by myself at a joke that that I've heard it before, you know. I mean, but here we go. I want to cover a lot of ground here tonight. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I live in Austin, Texas now. I've been in Austin for 40 years, but over 40 years. But I grew up in Dallas, and I grew up in the baby boom. You know, it's a funny time growing up in America. But I mean, it was the baby boom right after World War II. There were 61 children on the block that I grew up on, and but you know, it was an interesting time in America. But I mean, I come from a pretty normal family. I mean, my mother, my sainted 97-year-old mother, was a school teacher for 47 years. I mean, I was pretty well prepared for the first grade. I mean, really kind of kicked ass if you have to know. But I mean, I was, and then my dad was a forklift salesman and a he was a salesman his whole life. But I mean, I don't know exactly what a functional family is, but I know I've heard enough fifth steps over the years to know that a lot of people had it a lot worse than I did growing up. I mean, nobody in my house was knocking each other around. Nobody was, there was no drinking in my house. We grew up Southern Baptist, you know, I mean, whatever it is, we're against it, you know, but I mean, it was a pretty normal household. And there's a couple of things worth mentioning. I had a sister 5 years older than me that was perfect. She was all everything. She was National Honor Society, drum majorette, absolutely beautiful. First chair flute player in the Delhi Symphony Orchestra, all this stuff. And then here comes this thuggish little brother, you know, and I mean, and that was a lot of pressure there. But I mean, and the other thing I remember from growing up, did anybody else grow up under the burden of potential? Anybody here? Oh my God. It's like, if I heard one more time, if you could just apply yourself, you know, I mean, I still don't know how to do that. You know, if you could be, why can't you be more like Charles Molière across the street? You know, and I remember thinking, God, that's flattering, Mom, but, you know, I'm really not holding back that much. You know, you're kind of getting my best shot here, you know, but I mean, a lot of pressure there, a lot of talk. As a teacher, my mother was all about education and IQs. You know, IQ was like a free pass to the world. The way I heard it was if you had a high IQ, you didn't have to do anything. The whole world would just be handed to you. Turns out that the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous have higher than average IQs. You know, it's funny. You know how you hear in rooms of AA that people in AA have higher IQs than most of the population, and everybody nods their head, right? He goes, you know, you only hear that in AA meetings. Over at the American Medical Association, they're not over there talking about what geniuses we are, you know? It's like, did you see Charlie ran into that tree the other night? I did call my mother one time and tell her that the Big Book told me I'm a genius. Because in the Big Book it says he has an absolute genius for getting drunk at exactly the wrong time. And I'm like, there it is. I finally made it. But, you know, none of that stuff made me an alcoholic. You know, and I mean, it's funny. My sponsor is a bookbinder, and all this is a large print copy of the AA Big Book. And right here on the title page is the first promise in the Big Book. It says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Isn't that interesting? So on the title page of the book, it's already saying something different from what I've been hearing in discussion meetings for a long time. And, you know, and now here's the thing, though. I don't care whether you say recovered or recovering or spot, but one of the things I've noticed, the one thing I will say is don't let anybody read your Big Book for you. You know, if you have a firm belief about something, ask yourself, where did it come from? And is it consistent with our literature? And if you're comfortable with it, rock on, you know? But I mean, because one of the things I noticed at Alcoholics Anonymous is that whenever we form a firing squad in AA, we always form a circle. And so we got some of our best members picking each other off, over whether it's sponsee or protege or recovered or recovering or twofold illness, threefold illness, stuff like that. But if we are talking about it, I've been granted the greatest gift that God could give an alcoholic of my variety, and that's escape from this hopeless state of mind and body. So if we're talking about having recovered, what are we talking about having recovered from? You know, on page 30 in the book, it says, I gotta get this screen out of here. There's all kind of activity going on here. All right, here we go. If we're talking about having recovered, what are we talking about recovered from? And on page 30, it says, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholic. It says it's the first step in recovery. Well, if I got to fully concede to my innermost self that I'm alcoholic, I best know what it means to be alcoholic. Does that make sense? Because I spent a lot of time in the rooms of AA, raising my hand when it was my turn and saying, my name's Charlie and I'm alcoholic. And I didn't really know what it meant. I mean, I knew if there was such a thing as an alcoholic, surely I must be one. I didn't know anybody that drank more than I did. I mean, I've met some since then. We have some really impressive stories in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, we're the only fellowship where a guy could be up at the podium and say, yeah, I knocked over the Christmas tree and I burned out of the driveway on Christmas morning. I got a DUI with a 4.2 blood alcohol level. And we'll reach over and nudge each other and go, 4.2, that's pretty solid right there. You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, what is it now for a DUI? Like 0.8, I think? Is that what it is in Canada? My God, I used to wake up with a 0.8, you know, but whatever it is, you know, I didn't know what it really meant to be an alcoholic. I like to take a minute to break it down because I think it, you know, my buddy Ernie is on here with us. He's up there in Ontario, and he's one of the best guys as far as breaking down this first. And we talk a lot about how we tend to rush people into the rooms of AA and say nobody gets here by mistake. And it's worth spending a little bit of time giving this guy what I call a first step experience or a fatal dose of alcoholism. And I'm going to try to do it as fast as I can because I got a lot of ground to cover. But it turns out, now, I did want to give a shout out to the Reticent Boys. I saw my crowd of people on one of those screens in there. I just want to give a shout out. I'm glad you're here. Now listen to this part. Turns out that as an alcoholic, I got two problems with alcohol. One happens to me when I drink it. The other one happens to me when I don't drink it. Other than that, I don't struggle with alcohol. It only gives me trouble when I'm drinking it and when I'm not drinking it. And you know, the first piece of it and it talks about it in the doctor's opinion in the first 23 pages of the book, but it says I have an abnormal physical reaction to alcohol. Only about 10% of the population even has the potential to become alcoholic because of this physical reaction to alcohol. My sister doesn't have it, but I do, you know, and what it in Roman numeral 28, Dr. Silkworth describes it, and he says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is the manifestation of an allergy. I like to break this down because nobody talked like this on their way to AA. You know, I mean, so when we talk about an allergy, we're talking about an abnormal physical reaction, right? Say, if everybody on this first screen, we all sit down and eat strawberries. We're all having a good time shooting the ball and eating strawberries. But all of a sudden, my throat starts swelling shut, and my eyes swell shut, and I start falling out, and you have to call 911, and they come give me an EpiPen, and you'd say, this guy's got an abnormal physical reaction to strawberries. And the way it manifests is just the way it presents itself. How does my allergy to alcohol manifest? Is in this phenomenon of craving. Now, phenomenon just means it's something we've seen. We don't know why it happens, but we've seen it happen enough to know it happens. And then, now, so when I drink vodka, it triggers a craving that's outside of my control. If I was to drink vodka tonight, I couldn't tell you how much I would drink or when I'm going to stop with any predictability. And the most important thing you can do with anything I say or anything this book says is hold it up against your experience and see if it's a match. We believe strongly in turning statements in the big book into questions and taking these statements and saying, is this true for me? Is this my current belief based on my experience and what I'm reading in this book? You know, and so it says, but this craving, it says when I drink, it triggers this craving. And here's the tricky part. I never thought I'd triggered a phenomenon. You know, I'd start drinking and I'd drink way too much, but I never thought I'd triggered a phenomenon of craving. I just thought I'd changed my mind. Anybody ever go in to have a couple of drinks and you go, you know what? I know I said I was going to have two. Two's a bad number. I believe, you know, I got to tell you, I got a little time tonight. I've been doing all these 20-minute talks and stuff. It was killing me because I can't cover. But, you know, Katie and I were out in Las Vegas one time and we were at this sober house. And I fell in love with this guy that was in this sober house. We're all talking, we're having a little connect the dots meeting where we're going through the book and connecting this to that and this to that. And this guy, out of nowhere, this guy that's one of the clients there, he goes, man, sucks that I'm alcoholic. He goes, I wish I wasn't alcoholic so I could drink all the time. I was like, that is my man right there. You know, I mean, can't you feel his pain? But he's going, you know, the one thing I really like to do, and I got to be allergic to it. You know, I mean, why can't I be diabetic or gluten intolerant or something? But no, I got to be. He goes, I wish I could just have like 7 drinks. I was like, that is my guy right there. Not 2, but 7 seems like a reasonable number, doesn't it? You know, and so, but when we go on, the reason I like to talk about this stuff because it didn't make sense the first time I was reading it. I used to drink at a little place in East Dallas called the Spillway Pub. Wonderful little place. I promise you, I never one time wandered into the Spillway Pub and leaned up against the bar and went, Oh, Bobby, 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 God Almighty, the spiritual malady is on me today. And I had a beer on the way over here, and it has triggered a phenomenon of craving that's kicking my, nobody talk like that, but I mean, so this is stuff I've learned since I've been here, but it really helps if you can help a guy see what the real problem is. Because the problem with what happens when I take a drink is a big problem. The book talks about it a lot. He goes on to say men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Any argument on that one? I mean, I think it's a little understated. I mean, I like banana pudding, but I love the effect produced by alcohol. I probably still love vodka more than most people that are out there drinking it. But I mean, the first time I ever got loaded, I remember thinking, oh, we're going to do this a lot, and from that day moving forward, drinking moved to the center of my life. And anything that got between me and drinking moved out of the way. I was so happy to hear Jeff talking about how he enjoyed how drinking was fun for a while. I mean, sometimes I hear the dumbest stuff in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, one of the dumbest things I've ever heard anybody say today is I heard a guy go, my best day drinking was better than my worst day sober. I'm like, what? I mean, my best day drinking was amazing. And my worst day sober has been pretty awful, but I mean, I don't know exactly what that means, but for a while it was good. If it still did for me what it did for me when I was 19, you'd have a different speaker up here today. But this thing about it, it says after a while I can't tell the truth from the false. One of the ways I can't tell the truth from the false is I'm sitting in my 5th, 6th, 7th treatment center, but I think I'm about to get a handle on this thing, right? I think, you know what? I mean, if I was as lame as you guys, I might try your stupid little 12-step thing, but if you understood how complex, if you gave every one of us a flag to wave, when we get to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, everybody's flag would say the same thing. Everybody's flag would say, you don't understand, my case is different. You don't understand, my case is different. If you understood how complex and complicated my situation is, frankly, you'd be embarrassed to be offering me your little 12-step thing. I mean, I don't know anybody that's ever walked into their first AA meeting and looked at the steps up on the wall and read them and gone, yeah, that should do it. I mean, it's like the first step drives me into the second step drives me, and it rolls like that. That's why we got to put so much horsepower behind this first step. And it says, my favorite is it says, their alcoholic life seems like the only normal, right? We think everybody drinks like we do. And I'm going to give you a fact about alcoholism life. Where my alcoholic life seems the only normal one, this is going to blow your mind. Get ready for this one. Did you know that most people, vast majority of the population, is born, lives their whole life, and dies without ever being arrested? I know, it's crazy. I mean, if I was to call up my 97-year-old mother and say, oh, I can't come over, Mom, I got to go see my PO and give a UA because I got a DUI. She'd have no idea what we're talking about. Around here, we're like, oh, it sucks, man. Who's your PO? How much time you got? I mean, so anyway, this thing that happens when I drink, it's a big problem, but it's not my biggest problem. Because if my biggest problem was what happens to me when I drink vodka, my solution would be real simple. Don't drink vodka, right? But that's the problem. The second piece of alcoholism is that I don't get okay when I stop drinking. To my mother, it seemed like he just needs to quit drinking. He's a good boy when he's not drinking. My mother, she had a way of moving just this one finger when she would talk. And she would say, you are such an idiot. You drink every day. And I remember thinking, Mom, everybody I know drinks every day. And what I didn't know to tell her was if drinking did for you what it does for me, you'd be stupid not to drink every day. I mean, why would I ever take a day off from that? You know, but the problem, the thing my mother didn't know is what happens when I'm not drinking, is that my problems don't go away. In fact, it feels like somebody turns the heat up on them. Anybody else have that experience where after a couple of weeks sober, I'm more violent dry than I was drinking? You know, I mean, you let me get a couple weeks, couple months without a drink, and it's like I get restless. I'm just jumpy. I don't like the way my clothes are touching me. It says I get irritable. Right? Now, irritable is kind of uncool. I don't like being described as irritable. But it's not my fault if I become keenly aware of how stupid everybody else is. Right? Jeff was talking about the morons. I mean, do you ever notice that in traffic, everybody going slower than me is a moron, and everybody going faster than me is a maniac? So all eyes on me, because I'm going the perfect speed at all times. You know, all you got to do is just keep your eyes on me. Well, I get so uncomfortable sober that after a while, I start needing relief. And when I need relief, I can't think the drink all the way through. You can't tell a guy like me, don't drink no matter what, because I drink no matter what. And so what happens is, when I get in this terrible cycle, I drink, and I trigger the phenomenon of craving. Now I'm all about drinking. And after a while, it gets so bad that I either have to stop or I get stopped. Now I'm stopped, and I'm stopped, and I'm stopped. And you know what? Things are getting maybe they're not that bad. Maybe I'm making too big a deal out of this thing. Maybe she's not going to leave. Maybe they're not going to fire me. But after a while, I start getting really uncomfortable. I start getting restless and irritable and discontent, and things start bothering me until I finally, the mental obsession is on me. The mental obsession makes me powerless over the first drink, and the phenomenon of craving makes me powerless over the second drink. So I drink until I have to stop, and then I stop until I have to drink. And I drink until I have to stop, and I stop until I have to drink. And if you're caught in that terrible cycle, believe me, there's a bottom below the bottom you know. I tell the guys I'm working with, don't ever say it can't get any worse. That just shows a lack of imagination. You know, you might in 3 years from now go, man, I wish I'd quit back in 2020 when things were still going pretty good. Well, all of this goes into the step one. And you know what? I like to break that down because, you know, in the doctor's opinion, it says we find the doctor's opinion, his description of the craving. Dr. Silkworth says any description of alcoholism which leaves out this physical aspect is incomplete because it explains a lot of stuff I've never been able to explain before. It explains why when I start drinking, I can't stop. And it explains why when I swear to God I'm going to stop, I can't pull it off. You know, and so I started drinking when I was about 13, but I didn't really get going good until I was about 16. And things really started going bad. I mean, things were going downhill, and I started getting in some trouble. And you know, I've used a lot of things to treat my spiritual malady other than alcohol, but I'm a big believer in Alcoholics Anonymous, singleness of purpose. I don't really have time to talk about it, but really, well, I'll just talk about it a little bit. AA is a one-trick pony. We are alcoholics working with alcoholics, and we don't care whether you're alcoholic in anything else as long as you're alcoholic, but our focus is very tight. So when we say our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism, we don't care what else it is. We just are focused. So, you know, and the reason for that is this identification that the book talks about on page 18. On page 18, it says, it talks about doctors and psychiatrists who have worked with us find it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve, right? I mean, we're the only group of people I can think of that'll go to a psychiatrist's office and pay them $200 an hour and lie to them the whole time. You know, I mean, if I go to a psychiatrist and he says, tell me, Mr. Parker, do you drink? I'm not going to go, yeah, buddy. Yes, sir. I like me some drinking. You know, I mean, I like to get a case of beer and a half gallon of vodka and just see what the day brings. You know, I mean, I'm not going to tell him that. I'm going to say, well, I might have a couple of beers if I'm mowing the lawn or something, like I've mowed the lawn lately, but I mean, and then it says, wives, parents, and intimate friends find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist and the doctor. But here's the key part of this identification piece. It says, but the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who's properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of a new man in a matter of hours. Here's the huge piece. It says, until such an identification is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. What they say is that until we have this identification, we're not going anywhere. But when we do have that identification, I might be willing to take actions that I don't even believe in yet. I mean, like say Garnett tells me I could feel on an energy level that he drank like I did. He's telling me he doesn't do it anymore. I don't have to, I might be willing to just, when I need relief that badly, I might take actions I don't even believe in. So, hopefully you won't ever hear it. This identification piece is so big that hopefully you won't ever hear any of my sponsees in a meeting saying I'm an alcoholic and anything else, because it doesn't apply. In the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, we're identifying as alcoholics. Saying I'm an alcoholic and anything else would be like saying I'm an alcoholic and a Texan, or an alcoholic and a contractor. That's not what we're identifying in this room. Right? I hope that makes sense. Because this identification, and one of the ways to understand the importance of identification is when it's not there. Oh my God. One time I sobered up around Christmas time, and on Christmas Day, I mean, the first time I got sober in '83, it was Christmas Day, and we had this full spread Christmas dinner. I mean, it was everything. And I'm a big boy now, but I was about 300 pounds then. And I say that to say I was very interested in this lunch. And I'm just about to sit down with my meal, and the door swings open, and in walk some do-gooders from one of the local churches, and they've come to sing Christmas carols to us heathen alcoholics. Are you sensing my excitement? Because now I don't get to eat lunch, and we got to listen. And there's this one woman, and everybody wants to try to identify. This one woman, I see her, and she's going around, and she says something to this guy, and she says something to this guy, says something to this lady, says something to this guy, and she's coming my way. And when she gets to me, she leans over and she says, "Are you a patient here?" And I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "I know exactly what you're going through." I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yes, I was once addicted to caffeine." And I was like, "Oh, ain't that a bitch?" Yeah. I mean, let me ask you a question. Did you ever pawn your mom's sterling silver to buy a can of, what do they call, what's the coffee up in Canada? Tim Horton. Yeah. Did you ever pawn your mom's sterling to buy a can of Tim Horton? I mean, bless her heart. She was trying to identify, but it wasn't there, But this identification, one of my favorite games to play when we actually used to get to fly to conferences and talk to people is if they said, "Dustin's going to come pick you up at the airport," and we'd get on the phone and he'd say, "Listen, I'm about," I go, "Don't even tell me. Don't even tell me what you look like. Just be in baggage claim." And I can't tell you how many times Katie and I have come off the plane, gone down the escalator, and you look around and you go, "There's our boy right there." And you walk over and go, "Are you Dustin?" And they're like, "Yeah. How'd you know?" And you're like, "I feel you, brother." I mean, we feel each other on an energy level. That's why geographic cures don't work for me. You can plop me down in San Francisco, and in 10 minutes, I'll look around and go, "He looks like he parties," and off we go again, because of this. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, and I talked about it. I got to warn you. I got a little ADD working, and there are times when I'll say, we're going to get back to that later. And what that means is that this ain't the right time in the talk to introduce that chunk of information, right? But when I tell you we're going to get back to it later, we're probably not coming back. I mean, I always get real excited when I actually circle back around to one. But, going back to my drinking, it started going downhill really fast. And I'm going to try to get through this pretty fast. But one night I was in a wreck, and I smashed a car and in a blackout, and I grabbed my shoes and I'm running back to the bar to report the car stolen. And you know, this is not an extraordinary day. This is just a typical day for Charlie. But I'm running back, and there's these two cops standing in the street shining their flashlight on all this glass. I'm like, God, they got here fast, you know? And so I report the car stolen, and the next morning they call and they go, Mr. Parker, you're gonna have to take a polygraph test before you get your car back. I said, why is that? And they said, well, it was involved in an accident before it was reported stolen. I said, you're kidding. They said, no, they actually ran into a parked police car. And I remember thinking, that explains how they got there so fast, you know, because I've been a little foggy on that one, you know. But I mean, Norm Alpe, an old-time AA speaker, used to talk about that our lives were saved and changed by seconds and inches. And that was another break for me. If those two cops had been unfortunate enough to be standing there doing their job that night, I could still be in jail, you know. So I mean, I'm so grateful for some of the breaks. But you know, after a while, it starts going downhill, and I started losing the power of choice and control in my drinking. It talks about it on page 24. It says, at a certain point of the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of no avail. Most of us know what the only requirement for membership in AA is. A desire to stop drinking will get me a front row seat for any AA meeting in the world. But it says right there on page 24, it won't do a darn thing to keep me sober. It says I pass into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is worthless. It says the fact is that most alcoholics have lost the power of choice and drink. When I talk about losing the power of choice and drink, it reminds me of the pawn shops. I loved pawn shops. I loved everything about the pawn shops. Any other pawn shoppers here tonight? You know, I mean, I loved everything because one of the things I loved about it was the purity of it. I never one time had a pawnbroker go, good God, man, weren't you just here this morning? You know, or what do you intend to do with this money? It's not like that. You just take them the shotgun and they give you the money. And you take them the deer rifle and they give you the money. And you take them the sterling silver and they give you the money. And I always had a plan. I mean, we alcoholics make some brilliant plans. I mean, we make plans that you could take over to the university and they'd look it over and go, that's a pretty good plan you got there, you know? And our plans work right up till they quit working, you know? And my plan was that I had 90 days to get everything out of the pawn shop. And in 90 days, I could usually pull some kind of a scam or do some kind of a deal that would get everything out of the pawn shop. So one time, I did an insurance scam, and I had enough money to get everything out of the pawn shop, but I'm going to stop by the Spillway pub and settle my tab. It was the only place in Dallas that would let me run a tab. So we're not going to go crazy. We're certainly not going to trigger any stupid phenomenon of craving or anything. We're just going to go by and settle our tab. Well, I am a blackout drinker. I blacked out a lot. I mean, oblivion was my goal, you know. So I mean, but this was 5 days. I mean, I had a lot of blackouts where I don't remember the drive home, or you have to look out the curtain to see if the car's in the driveway, and you know, you're like, why are there weeds in the bumper? You know, and stuff like that. But I mean, this was 5 days where I don't remember nothing. And I wake up and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed at my mother's house. I slept with my clothes on, passed out with my clothes on. And when I wake up, I can still tell you everything about the room, the carpet, the bedspread, the furniture, the wallpaper, the temperature of the room. Because when I woke up, in my right-hand pocket, I had $8. And in my left pocket, I still had all those pawn tickets. And I hadn't gotten a darn thing out of the pawn shop. And we've all had those moments, you know, where you just go, oh no. Oh no. Because now I got nothing and I don't feel very good and I'm out of answers. And I shot my wad on that last scam and now I got nothing. And I'm not a sociopath. I'm not going to sell my father's shotgun for $40. So I would have to go to my father, who was a good man, Nobody was giving him his stuff. I'd have to go to my dad and go, Dad, listen, if we act now, I could get you a pretty good deal on all your stuff. I forgot to mention a key piece of the whole pawn shop cycle is that I didn't own very much stuff. So I was having to pawn stuff that didn't belong to me. I forgot to mention that piece, so I would have to go to my dad. And the thing was, Dallas is a big spread out town like Los Angeles. It's not just go to the pawn shop. It's like, we got to go up on Buckner Boulevard and get your shotgun. And we got to go up on East Grand and get your deer rifle. And we got to go to Oak Cliff and get the sterling silver, and your metal detectors are out on Garland Road. So it was all day in the car with me and my dad and all that shame. And when I'd be driving along with him, I'd be going, Dad, I swear to God, I will never do this again. I swear to God, I'll never do this again. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want you to feel like this. I'll never do this again. And if I was lying to that man, I damn sure didn't know it, because it felt like I meant it with every fiber of my being. But what I didn't know, riding in the truck with him that day, is that I didn't have the power to make good on that promise. Anybody that can make up their mind to stop drinking, AA is not for people that can make up their mind to stop drinking and pull it off. A guy that can make up his mind to stop drinking and pull it off doesn't even belong in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, I don't mind if he comes. Kind of wish he'd keep his mouth shut and not sponsor anybody, because, what would keep him sober would kill a drunk like me, but I mean, I don't mind if he comes. But I mean, because Alcoholics Anonymous is for guys like me that swear to God, I'm not going to drink again. And I drink again. And I drink again. And I drink again. By the time I got to you fine people, my father and I had made the rounds of the pawn shops 3 times. That's how cool I was. That's how slick I was. I was a burden to anybody that loved me or was unfortunate enough to be associated with. That's the guy I brought to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I came to AA, and I'm going to try to cover as much ground as I can here. I came to AA. Because here's the thing. We talk about what I was like, what happened, and what I was like now. For me, I had my biggest spiritual awakening at 17 years of sobriety. So for me, it's almost like what I was like, what happened, then what happened, and what it's like now. Because I want to get to that. So I come to AA the first time, and I got a sponsor. I was very fortunate that I fell in love with you people. I fell in love with the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought everybody did, but only the lucky ones. I mean, Kate and I started asking this question in big conferences when you got a room full of people. You say, how many people love the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous? And it's not a huge number, maybe 20%. I thought it was everybody. That'll buy you some time, because I love the meetings, I love the humor, I love, the connected, the identification. But I get a sponsor, I work the steps. I thought I was a big book guy. One of the things that my sponsor, Mark Houston, used to say was, how do you know what you don't know? I missed a lot that first time through the steps. And I used to be embarrassed to talk about it until I realized how much company I had, because I missed an awful lot the first time through the steps. And, I was going to meetings, there was some God, but, in the 12 and 12, it says you can have faith in God, but still keep him out of your life. And the way that shows up for a guy like me is my God consciousness starts to drive down, self-will starts to rise up. Before you know it, God doesn't have anything to do with anything. And I'm running my whole life based on self-will, and I don't even know it. We do a little exercise at the table on Thursday nights that we call current agnosticism. And we have a meeting in my house on Thursday nights with my sponsees called The Common Solution. We want to be one voice, one message. Whichever one of us you're talking to, you should be getting basically the same solution. And one of the exercises we do sometimes is what we call current agnosticism. What areas of my life am I not involving God in? And one time we were getting ready to go to a men's conference, and there's a bunch of boys from out of state. The Colorado boys were down, and we did the cardiac Gnosticism exercise. We get to this one guy, good AA member, counselor. And we get to him, and he goes, man, we're like, what? He goes, well, the 3 areas of my life I'm not involved in God in are my job, my kids, and my marriage. And we're like, but other than that, nothing big, right? It's just, and it's like we've slipped into that without even knowing that it's happening. But that's stuff that I'm going to talk about later. And in my first approach to the steps, turns out I was working a program like the problem was alcohol, and what happened was, are you alcoholic? Do you believe in God? We'll struggle there. And then we went to the third step prayer, started writing inventory. My first inventory was kind of a big confession, right? Not a terrible exercise, but not what I see in the book saying to do now. And then I did a fifth step, and then 6 and 7, whatever. And then I started making amends, and I was amazed before I was halfway through, and the 10th step, I'd do if I really hurt your feelings or upset you, I would clean that up. And then very little disciplines in 10 and 11 as far as meditation and prayer and evening review and corrective measures and the stuff that I do now. In fact, a good day was have the 24-hour day book on the back of the toilet. And if on a good day, I would open it, read it, and I might as well have read it and just gone, okay, God, see you tomorrow. And out the door, living life based on self-will. And I was having a lot of trouble in sobriety. I was working the program like the problem was alcohol. Now, believe me, for the new guys, the not drinking part of AA is pretty important. We have a real hard time giving you a spiritual experience while you're still drinking. But it's not the end of it. I'll never forget the first time I saw the line on page 19 where it says, we feel that the elimination of our drinking was but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. What? I remember thinking, how can it be a more important demonstration of our principles than staying sober? I thought if I didn't drink, I'd get an A, And so I'm that guy, that guy in me. He's the guy that's going, well, screamed at my wife this morning, and I slapped one of the kids on the way out the front door, and then I burned out of the driveway and got to work an hour late and looked at 2 hours of internet pornography at the office. And then I went to lunch. I came back and gambled on the internet for a little while, and I left work an hour early, got a half gallon of vanilla ice cream and ate it on the front seat of the car without a spoon. But I didn't drink today, and by God, that makes me a winner. And they're like, well, not exactly, Winner may not be the first word we go to, but we're glad you're sober, And so anyway, I'm in constant collision with something or somebody, and I can't figure out why. I got married at 2.5 years sober, and by 4.5 years sober, I'd blown it up. And so I waited, now I got a child support check going out the door. I got a baby on the ground. So I waited the appropriate amount of time in AA to get into a new relationship, right? 16 days, and I'm back in another relationship. And a couple of years later, I've blown that one up. And now there's another baby on the ground. And my life is not going according to my values. And I can't figure out why. And I kind of thought I'd run into the failure of Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought, you know what, guys? I've tried it your ways. Forget this. I'll show you what half measures will avail me. And I was still very much about staying sober, but I kind of lightened up on the rigorous honesty part of the program, and for a while there, I was what I like to call a good example of a bad example. I was staying sober, but I wasn't a great guy. But what happened was I kept having trouble and stress and that sort of thing. Well, one night we chartered a plane. I was in this marriage, we were out on Eastern Long Island, and we chartered a plane from the Hamptons to fly back into New York City. And we're flying along, and first time I've ever chartered a plane in my life. Cessna 210 with retractable landing gear, July 20th of 2003. We're flying along at 3,500 feet. And all of a sudden, we're in a glider. And I'm sitting in the co-pilot seat. Now, I'm not a co-pilot. And I put on the little headphones, and they come on the radio, and they say, now the thing you don't want your co-pilot, your charter pilot to be saying when you put on the headphones is for him to be sitting there jacking this thing on the dashboard going, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. And I'm just sitting there going, what? And I put on the headphones and they go, you're cleared to Gabreski. Now there's an airport, there's a runway at 10 o'clock. We're not gonna make it. We're not gonna clear the water. We're not gonna clear the trees. We're darn sure not gonna make this runway. And the pilot says, you don't understand, I've lost engine power. I can't make land. I'm gonna have to ditch. And I'm like, what? You know, I mean, now, I'm a gambler my whole life. What are the odds the first time we ever charter a plane, we're gonna have to set it down in the water at night? And he says, he turns towards the shore, he goes, brace for impact. Anybody know how to do that? You know, I mean, and so I put my hands on the dashboard. We come in and boosh, we hit the water, you know, at full speed, and it's noise and spray and water, and the windshield comes in, and the cowling comes off, and all this racket, and then absolute silence. And all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I think we're all right. Now my door wouldn't come open, and I'm going, my door won't come open, my door won't come open. Now, about that time, I felt something on my knee. This was not much of an airplane, but it was a really crappy boat. I mean, about that time, water just goes up like that. And I go up to undo my seatbelt, and I go up to get some air, and there's nothing but water in the roof of the plane. So I remember thinking, so this is it. This is it. We died today in this blankety blank airplane. Spoiler alert, I didn't die, but the door comes open and I grab the roof. I'd like to tell you my first thought when the door came open was of my wife, or there was 5 adults and my dog on the plane with us. It wasn't though. When I pulled on the roof and I felt my feet come free, my first thought was, I'm out, I'm out. And I go up and I get some air and I go back down and I pull her out. And I go up, I get some air, and I pull the dog out. And we all got out, and the only one that didn't survive was the dog. The dog drowned, but it was really, really close. And I went up on CNN with this new cub reporter that was trying to make a name for himself. He had a little show called Live from the Headlines with Anderson Cooper. But he was brand new, you know, and he's interviewing me, and my friends around the country are going, is that Charlie? You know, I mean, but I mean, well, I got to get this thing moving, because what happened is after that plane crash, it was a life-changing experience for me. I mean, a near-death experience like that got me looking at some things differently. And a lot of stuff that I hadn't been taking seriously, I started taking seriously. You know, and I come back to Austin, and I mean, I knew I was in trouble. And now here's where the story gets interesting, I think. I knew that I was self-centered, but not to the extent that the book talks about. I remember calling up this old timer, John Henry. And I go, John Henry, man, I am so self-centered. I can't even be in a conversation with somebody. I mean, I would just like, if I ran into Dustin, I'd have to go, how you doing, Dustin? How are the kids? You know, and act like I give a flip about the answer, because I don't. I mean, I don't care about nothing but me. This probably doesn't happen in Canada, but it's real bad in Texas. You know, and I mean, the level of self-centeredness that I carried around was unbelievable. I'll give you an example. 15 years sober. I walk in the AA club one time, and there's this guy that I've only known sober. His name's Steve. And he goes, hey, Charlie, how you doing? I go, hey, what's up, man? And he goes, yeah, he goes, you know, we need to go back to Vegas sometime. And I go, yeah. And I turn around away from him, and I am horrified, because I'm 15 years sober. I've only known this guy sober, and I have zero recollection of ever being in Vegas with this guy. And I get to thinking about it, and I'm racking my brain, and then I remember there was a trip to Las Vegas with 4 of us guys from AA. We went out there and we played golf, and we got massages, and we went to shows, and we gambled and all this stuff. But the reason I don't remember being in Vegas with this guy is because I wasn't in Vegas with this guy. I was in Vegas with me. And he was just one of those shadowy figures on the periphery. Anybody else have that kind of self-centeredness? Well, I was like, he was not the star of my show. He was not even a bit player in my show. That's the level of self-centeredness that I carry around, and I can't figure out how I keep hurting people's feelings or how I keep blowing up marriages and stuff like that. Well, you know, I started going out to the treatment center with John Henry. I started carrying the message. And there were times where I felt like I'm 17 years sober, so guys are asking me if I'll sponsor them, right? There was times where I felt like I was a step ahead of these guys. I had my biggest spiritual awakening, though, at 17 years sober, because I get back into the book and into the work, and I start doing the set-aside prayer, and I start looking for, stuff starts coming off the page at me that I've never seen before, and then next thing you know, I meet Myers, and I meet Chris R., this guy with a little eye patch from Texas that I just shared the podium at Founders Day with. It's amazing. Myers is my sponsor now, but about that time, I hooked up Katie, and I hooked up with Mark Houston. And we go to this Mark. If you don't hear me say anything else today, get a hold of some Mark Houston. We go to this workshop with Mark Houston, and Katie and I are sitting up on the front row. And at one point, I remember leaning over to Katie. Mark was up there talking about stuff, and I leaned over. He's coming out of this book, and I leaned over to Katie, and I go, "Good God, what book is he reading from?" And Katie goes, "I think it's the big book." But I mean, he was coming with stuff that I had never heard before. That weekend blew my mind. And so we come back, and it turns out Mark Houston was doing it on a whole different level. And I come back, step one meant something different than I thought it meant. Step three meant something way different than I thought it meant. Because one of the biggest mistakes, and this is what I talked about at Founders Day, one of the biggest mistakes I see being made in Alcoholics Anonymous, assuming there are any mistakes being made in AA, is bringing a guy in saying, "Are you an alcoholic? Do you believe in God?" And if he says yes, we go right to the third step prayer, do the third step prayer, and get him right in inventory. That was my experience the first time through the steps. If you do it that way, and I used to be embarrassed to talk about it until I realized how much company I had. To a whole bunch of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the third step experience is saying the third step prayer. Well, if you go right from see that God could and what if he had sought to the third step prayer, you skip this body of work on pages 60 to 63. It's really not that important. It's just the root of my problem and the basis of my recovery for the rest of my life. Other than that, just skip it, And so I'm going back through there now, and I see there on page 60, right after the ABC that we read at the end of how it works, what the next line says, it says being convinced. We were at step 3. Being convinced of what? A, B, and C. So being convinced of A, B, and C puts me in step 3. A, B, and C must do a pretty good job of summing up 1 and 2. A, that I'm alcoholic and could not manage my own life. By now we know what that means. Physical allergy coupled with the mental obsession. B, that probably no human power could have relieved my alcoholism. My sponsor, my best friend, me, nobody's going to be able to keep. And then C, that God could, and what if he were sought? And it says, being convinced of those things, I'm at step 3, which is we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God. And it says, and it asks 2 what I think are very fair questions for the new guy to ask me when we get to this point. It'd be a very fair question for him to go, okay, well, what do you mean by that? And what do you want me to do? Page 29 promises clear-cut directions on how we recover. That is good news. So it's fair for him to go, what do you mean by turn my will and my life over to care of God? And what do you want me to do? And he spends the next 2 pages talking about what we mean when it shifts over to what we do. But it says the first requirement in step 3, I had never seen before, because I used to read the book, and we call it a confirmation bias. I wasn't looking for new information. I was looking for confirmation of ways I'm already right. This probably doesn't happen with any of you guys, but I'd read the book and I'd be going, oh yeah, oh yeah. That's what I always say right there, and I'm not looking for new information. There was an old first century philosopher named Epictetus that said, you can't teach a man something that he thinks he already knows. So I wasn't looking for new information. I was looking for confirmation of ways I'm already right. And anything that didn't agree with what I already believed went right over my head. But this day I do the set-aside prayer, and it says the first requirement is that Charlie be convinced that his life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I remember seeing that line, 17 years sober, and going, my God, not only am I not convinced of that, that line has never touched me, because we went right from God to the third step prayer. And the way you could have told that line had never touched me would have been by following me around. Does this guy seem like a guy that's convinced that his life run on self-will could hardly be a success? Or does he seem like a guy that thinks, now that you got the booze off of me, I'll take it from here? You know, God's awesome and everything. I just don't need him for this thing here. You know, take a knee, God. I'll let you know if we're going to sing in. You know, but I mean, in the meantime, I got this. And it says on that basis, I'm almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though my motives are good. Talks about that actor that's trying to run the whole show. He's not the director. He's just the actor. And I got this delusion that if only everybody would just do right, everything would be great. It's not selfish. I'm trying to create Charlie-topia, but you're all invited. You know, it's going to be wonderful for all of us. And it talks about this toolkit of self-will where I'm mean to some guys, I'm nice to some guys, but it's always me trying to get my way. You know, and it doesn't work out very well. What usually happens? The show doesn't. This stuff changed my whole sobriety. And it's what we call the second surrender. When when it says, when you get over to the top of 62, it says selfishness and self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our trouble. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, Now, when I'm driven by fear, self-delusions, I'm not choosing to act that way. I'm driven by these things, and I don't even know what's pushing me. But then it goes on to say our troubles one of the biggest promises in the big book is where it says, so our troubles we think are basically of our own making. Well, why would that be a promise? Because if my problems are of y'all's making, the only way I'm ever going to be okay is if I can get everybody out there to act right. And I have very little experience with that. But if my problems are of my own making, a new approach, a new relationship with this God can give me a shot. The biggest movement I can have a guy take when I'm sponsoring him is moving him from my problems are coming at me to my problems are coming from me. I always thought if I could get everything arranged out here, then I'd be okay in here. And it's exactly the opposite. My outward conditions are always a demonstration of my inward principles, So we get okay in here and everything straightens up out here. But the biggest thing, I'll never forget it, says, above everything, we must be rid of this selfishness. I remember Mark used to look me dead in the eye one time and he goes, Charlie, what do the words above everything mean to you? I was like, I guess paramount importance. He goes, yeah, isn't it interesting? It doesn't even say above everything, we got to stop drinking. It's like vodka never was the problem. Vodka was the only thing I'd ever found that would ease the discomfort of a life based on selfishness and self-centeredness. And in that state, I get so uncomfortable that I'm going to treat it with something. And now it just blew wide open my recovery picture. Because now it's not just drink, don't drink. Now it's looking for manifestation of self. It changed, in the fourth step, it says being convinced that self, showing up in various ways, was what had defeated us. Right there in my book, I wrote, am I? Am I convinced of that? Being convinced of that, we considered self's common manifestations. So the inventory becomes a look at common ways that self shows up. The new guy again is going, okay, what am I looking for? What does self look like? And we go, well, resentment is the number one offender as a manifestation of self. Fear as the failure of self-will. Manifestations of self, the sexual instinct is aroused. It just changed everything. And, I got 2 or 3 minutes left. We call it the second surrender. It's one of the hugest things. The first surrender in AA is the surrender to booze and whatever else crashed me through the doors back. But this second surrender is the second surrender to self. And it usually comes after we've been around the rooms for a while trying to manage this thing sober. and getting knocked to the mat over and over. The problem when I said I was getting knocked to the mat and I thought, I was blowing up those marriages and I thought I'd come up against the failure of Alcoholics Anonymous. Problem was, I didn't have anybody in my life saying, Charlie, you're not up against the failure of AA. You're running up against the failure of self-will. This is what it looks like when you try to manage this thing on your own as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Moral and philosophical convictions galore. I couldn't live up to them. Well, that was my beginning of my biggest awakening. Now I'm working with guys and we're studying the book and I'm reading 2 pages a day out of the book, doing the set-aside prayer. Now I'm starting to ask different questions with my sponsor, my buddies. But what do you say when they say this? That's what we do. And going back and it just blew up everything, and man, just on and on and on. When I got with Mark, we made all of our amends. We're very much about making direct amends to all the people we have harmed. I'll never sit here and tell you that I've made amends to everybody I've ever harmed, but I can tell you right now I've made amends to everybody that I'm aware of. When I got with Mark, I had 42 amends cards that I had to go through. Some in sobriety, some from private. I started the meeting on Thursday nights. We started the primary purpose group, studying the book, started sponsoring guys with depths and weight. And when it comes to 10 and 11, I've got to have a guy. If I call to grab about something that's going on, I got to have a guy that's going to take me to where'd you make decisions based on self? How'd you set the ball rolling? Where did you? Because if I call a bitch about my wife and he starts talking about here's how you deal with a difficult woman or something, I'm a dead man. I got to see where my problems are of my own making. Well, all I can tell you in closing is that for the last 18 years, I have been on fire with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I almost missed it. If I'd have died in that plane crash, I would have missed it. If you'd have come to me when I had 17 years sober and said, Charlie, the thing that's going to change your life and set you on fire is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous coming right out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would have told you you're nuts. Because I've been in AA for 17 years. I thought I knew what it offered me. I've never stuck a toe in the water. If you're new here tonight, we love you and we're glad you're here. We hope you'll come back and be a part of our lives. But there's a lot of message of hope out there for the new guy in AA. I'm here to talk to the guy that's been here for a minute, what I call middle management. I'm sick of losing middle management. I'm here to talk to the guy that's got 5 years, 15 years, 25 years sober, and you're not feeling what you hear people describing in the rooms of AA. I'm here to tell you it's still available. And it's available as a result of getting with somebody that's done the work out of the book and saying, I don't know what to do. Will you show me? If you do that, you will not believe what's going to happen to your life. On page 152, it says the most satisfactory years of our existence lie ahead of us. Ask yourself, is that your current belief? Or does it seem like it peters out after 10 years? What if the rest of your life could be the best of your life? It's real simple. If you've got it, get out there and share it. And if you need it, come get it. What's stopping you? I'm Charlie Parker, I'm alcoholic.
Okay, sorry there, Charlie. I just
Okay.
got myself unmuted. That was an incredible message.
Thank you.
There's a lot of information in there about our source of our recovery, which is the big book. And you talked about what really struck a chord with me was the self-centeredness, the identification. I always remember Clancy Ice saying, why AA works. It's one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic long enough that he begins to identify and will begin to take actions that he does not yet believe in.
Amen.
That will help him get sober. I have a similar spiritual experience that you talked about, not so much with any plane crash or whatever, but it's related to getting back to the book. And at our area here, we have a 12-step commitment that we do once a year. We started out in the fall. It was started up by a couple great AA members, Harry Clark, long since passed, and a few other guys. And I'd been to a couple of these 12-step commitments, and I did the steps. And the guys that were kind of the leaders are running it. We usually get 40 guys. We split it up into 3 groups, and we have like a team leader for each of those groups. And every year they'd ask me, "Are you coming back? Are you doing the commitment this year?" I go, "No, I did it last year. I don't need to do it this year." And then they'd ask me that the following year, and I'd say, "No, I just did one a couple of years ago." And then, going back to the last line in the preamble, our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I went back to that commitment group, and I've been doing it every year for, I don't know now, 6 or 7 years, I think. A couple of those guys that were the leaders of the groups couldn't do it anymore because of work commitments. And that opened up an opportunity for me to be one of those team leads. And I suddenly realized that maybe I've learned a thing or two by going through the big book, that I can share my wisdom and my experience and strength with all these other newer people going through the big book. And there's that self-centeredness, still that 20 plus years sobriety that I had. Right? So I can definitely identify with that spiritual experience. So on behalf of the committee and everybody that's on the meeting tonight, thank you for your honesty and the keys to sobriety, getting into the big book and working with newcomers and working with your sponsor and working with your sponsees. And that's what it's all about. And it light a fire like it has with you. And I have that fire, I think, as well. And I'm grateful for those that showed me the way. So thank you very much, Charlie, on behalf of the committee.
Sure.
Okay, so.
Can I say one thing right quick?
Sure.
The information in the chat about primary purpose group is all correct, except we meet on Tuesday nights at 7:30 Central, not Thursday nights. So come see us. It's a really different meeting.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Okay, what we do for this meeting, to close the meeting, we have a volunteer read an excerpt from A Vision for You, and Garnet C. is going to read that for us.
Hi, friends. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Garnet.
Hey, Garnet.
Great job, Charlie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us.
Mommy did it. Mommy did it.
Hang on a sec, Hal.
Hey, Abdul.
Okay, Mama.
Looks like a little gift of sobriety.
Yes, he is. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand him. Understand God. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you have. Find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. And you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road to happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Thanks, Garnet.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes the formal part of the